Welcome to the Connected Enterprise Podcast. This is Carl Lewis, your host from Vision 33. And my guest today is Ambrose Blowfield from New Zealand. Ambrose, welcome to the podcast. Tell us about yourself and your company.
Fantastic. Thanks, Carl. As you possibly pick up from my accent, I was born in the UK, in Britain, in London. I was raised between the UK and Switzerland. I did a bilingual international business degree, which allowed me to study in both France and the UK because it was bilingual with French. Then I joined the American giant Procter & Gamble and was given the choice of the division to join. So I worked for them in sales. And then I thought, well, there's got to be more to life than working in Europe where I was raised. So I moved to Australia and New Zealand, and I've spent over 20 years here. And for the last 17 years, we've been training and coaching in sales, especially, but also in marketing a little bit too. Small to medium businesses right across the world. We've trained into over 20 countries now.
Well, we have a lot in common because that's been where I've been working. It was with the small and medium businesses for about the last 20 years also. So you're kind of a sales guy. Now, my wife tells me I am, but I'm not really, right? I
think you are. We've spoken before, Carl. I think you are very what she's saying is a compliment. She's saying you're charismatic and you're engaging, and you absolutely are.
Well, I have my moments, I'm sure. How has all of this pandemic stuff impacted the lives of salespeople and sales?
I think there's two responses. I know you're passionate around technology as well, so we'll address the second response, which is more around the online world, and pandemics accelerated some of that. But the pandemic itself, obviously, the first thing it did is most of our countries that we're selling into and coaching and training people worldwide into, obviously, it stopped them moving and it stopped them getting face to face. So one of the major opportunities that a large or small business has with the salesperson is engagement with the customer. It removed the ease of engagement. So that did two things. Firstly, for those that chose to remain proactive, those that still made calls, those that switched face-to-face meetings to being virtual meetings, those guys did perfectly well. They gained market share, almost just for the discipline of doing it. For those reliant on, I guess, what we would call the pre-pandemic old world system of face-to-face meetings, those guys suffered. But it's the same way with a recession or, the global financial crisis, GFC, the guys that were not proactive to make a change or have discipline, they struggled in that as well.
Yeah, for sure. Salespeople have a unique chemistry, right? As you said, they like to engage. They're kind of gregarious, typically. How did the pandemic kind of being shut down? How do you think it kind of affected them personally?
Well, I'll address that two ways. I guess the first thing we said, and my wife and I at the Sales Mastery Company last year, our goal was to help as many businesses as we could, whether we were paid for that or not. We're proud to have helped over 1,000 last year for free through free webinars and free coaching and free help. And one of the constant messages I just gave small business owners who often sell part-time or full-time salespeople was just call your customers and ask them how they're doing. The same question you just asked me. How did they do personally? The best thing a salesperson can do or a business owner can do is just show respect and care for how the person's situation is. And what we saw, or our clients got off the back of that, was a real breakdown of their relationships with their customers in a good way. People were being revealing. They were saying, oh, my husband's driving me nuts, or my kids are driving me crazy, or, my wife just won't listen at home. I love going to the office. And actually, those barriers, I think, are forever. They could come down now. So I think those that persisted and treated people like humans and genuinely just lent an ear and were kind have gained massive market share off the back of really good loyalty and respect. And the second thing is, you talked about the personality, obviously. The traditional salesperson is one of two things. Either they are warm, cuddly and friendly, really engaging and charismatic, and they want to be your best friend, or they're quite dominant, so they're definitely very expressive in the way they speak their mind, but they're quite driven and hardened, the sort of persona in America that we view, say, someone in Manhattan or New York, that real sort of drive to fight, as opposed to someone from the southern states who might be warm and put their arm around you and hug you type of scenario. And I'm generalizing, of course, but that's the personas, working a bit in America, that I've been given. And the people that really struggled were that warm, bubbly, friendly type, because they crave human contact in every possible way. A hug, a shaking of a hand, engaging someone, watching their body language. The virtual world that they've gone into in the last 16 months, that amazing strength they have of reading people, that was removed or reduced for them. And they struggled most, I believe.
Yeah, for sure. I was just bemoaning to my wife a few days ago that I don't mind working at home. I have for a long time, but I didn't have everybody else working at home. And so
Yes.
all of my little habits of like sneaking out for lunch and having a
Yes.
beer and a salad, now everybody's all up in my business, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I both traveled extensively. We've off air on that, Carl. Prior to COVID, for 9.5 years, I was traveling over 100 nights a year. Our customers, particularly across Australia and New Zealand, which is a huge landmass, there's 3.5 hours flight just between New Zealand and Australia. So picture North America and put two side by side. That's kind of the stretch. It's a 5-hour time zone difference in summertime. Yeah. But then it's North America and Europe, in Europe being, 11 or 13-hour time zone difference. I was traveling extensively. I've loved being at home, but a little bit like you said, you have to adapt. And some of those are those little quirks and habits.
Yeah, for sure. So how does a salesperson, take full advantage of virtual meetings as opposed to that one-on-one engagement that they're so used to?
I think there's a few things to go to. The first principle I'd say to anybody who's selling virtually, whether it's via Zoom or Microsoft Teams or Skype or whatever platform you decide to use, the magic word is the same one we've been teaching for the last 17 years on how to write and deliver a great presentation. It's engagement. You think about a really good speaker, a really good presenter, they engage you. Now, virtually, you don't have the advantage of shaking someone's hand and sharing a table or a boardroom with somebody, or a small meeting room, or even a coffee table in a local cafe. You don't have that advantage. So you have to work really hard at the rapport. And we've got to remember, in sales, it's all about serving others. So in the rapport building phase, you've got to engage the people on camera. I know you're excited to say what you've got to say, but they're excited by what they've got to say, not by what you've got to say. So you've got to get them talking, and you've got to keep interacting all the way through the virtual meeting. Does that make sense? Are you okay with that? Do you have any questions? Yes. Do you have a comment to make? Keep engaging them. It's so important. Engagement is king for virtual meetings, but that's the same if you're delivering a face-to-face presentation to school kids or customers or government departments.
Yeah, it's easy. It's easier to read the room when you're in the room. Right. And I think
in New Zealand, our national rugby team, and in New Zealand, I know America is so good at so many sports, as the recent Olympics has proven. You're number one on the medal tally for both numbers of medals and for gold medals, and didn't matter which way you measured it, it's phenomenal. In New Zealand, we've got 5 million people. And so for boys sports, there is rugby union as the number one sport by a mile. It's so dominant. It's almost by religion here. Like the Canadians love their hockey, we love our rugby. And the All Blacks say that's one of their mantras, if you like, is be where your feet are, be present, be in the moment, just focus on this moment. Don't get caught up. And I think entrepreneurs and business owners, that would be one of the best philosophies they could take. Just be where their feet are. This phone call and conversation is the only one that matters. Just focus on this one.
Right. A lot of those businesses sort of opened up for the first time on internet-based business, right? Yes. E-commerce sites, business portals, B2B portals, all those types of things. How do you think, that's going to impact the work of sales? I think a lot of people think, well, if you do that, you don't really need salespeople, do you? So what's your take on that?
Great question. As I mentioned before, because of the degree that I did and the companies I've worked for in various parts of the world, I've typically, in the 17 years, I've taught a lot of sales and a lot of marketing. Now, I made a decision 5 years ago, despite the fact that the internet was developing rapidly, so was social media. And to go back to your point, not just pandemic, but for the last 20 years, e-commerce has accelerated, obviously, ever increasing rate. America's dominated the world in many aspects of retail, e-commerce, obviously, with Amazon and others. But certainly, I chose sales for a reason. I think that it's, despite the fact that your customer can access more information, off your website, through your social media, through internet forums, gain opinions of other people, get some fresh feedback from the marketplace. Despite the fact that they can go further in their sales journey through e-commerce, I still believe that the salesperson must add value. And I think it's in two ways. In one way, obviously, to make sure you're selling value in what you're selling, to make sure you negotiate the benefits you deliver rather than negotiate down on price. Because if you're a small to medium business, you're not going to buy as big as Amazon or Walmart. So therefore, if the game becomes money driven, which a lot of e-commerce is heading towards and has been heading towards for 20 years, it's a game you're going to lose as a small to medium business. So therefore, you need to make sure the sales function comes in to negotiate and to engage. The second thing a salesperson can do that thankfully websites cannot yet do is really open the customer up. You can ask them engaging questions. And to me, that's the heart of sales. It's always been my way. It's always been the way I've been taught from people like Procter & Gamble, who spend hundreds of thousands of dollars training and developing their team every year.
Yep.
You know, engaging people, asking them questions. A website can prompt you. If you go to Amazon, you say, you buy that book. It says people who bought that book also bought this one. That's a mini prompt that's run by software. A salesperson could ask the question, so where do you want to be in 5 years' time? Where do you want your business to be? Where do you want your family to be? What fears have you got? What challenges are keeping you up at night? What concerns have you got? You can uncover that in sales, but
Yep.
marketing e-commerce never gets that deep.
Yep, very much so. Very much so. You sort of touched on a topic here that I wanted to follow up with you on. You had mentioned to me a couple of weeks ago that you had a working title for a new book, "Shut
Yes.
Up and Sell" or "Shut Up to
Yes.
Sell," something.
Shut up to sell. Absolutely.
Shut Up to Sell. So
Yes.
explain to us what that is all about.
Fantastic, Carl. So obviously you try to have a bit of a, it's like who moves my cheese or chicken soup for the soul. You want a name that's going to stand out. To me, sales is service. And I think you have to search very hard to find small niche industries where that is not a true statement. Our purpose in life is to serve others. And the purpose in sales is to serve us, not to push products onto people, but to put it in their mind that they want to pull a product from you. It's a bit of a kind of a reverse psychology or differing philosophy, if you like. And the problem we've got in sales is we watch movies, we watch TV shows, and we look at people in English expression of people who, they've got gift of the gab. They can speak really well. They're engaging and charismatic. That sells a movie really well, and it shows a really good fun and TV story. But that's not what customers want. Customers want to be heard. They want to hear the sound of their own voice way more than they want to hear the sound of the salesperson's voice. What they want to know from the salesperson are a few things. They want to feel respected. They want to feel heard. They want to feel like the customer or the seller empathize with them as a customer. And therefore, we need to shut up more as salespeople, which is wonderful because you mentioned personalities. The vast majority of humans, 2/3 of humans are the more introverted personalities. Most, we've trained 15,000 small businesses around the world over the years. Most small business owners are introverted personalities. They're not a natural salesperson.
Yep.
So it actually suits them. The fact the customer wants to speak, it suits them that 2/3 of people don't want to speak too much. So we need them to shut up in order to sell more because the customer does the speaking.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, most of the small businesses that I've been a part of or been around were started by accountants, right?
Interesting. Yeah.
And a few by salespeople, but most of them by accountants. And then it's really interesting to watch them twist themselves into a salesperson.
Yep. Oh, and we've had that conversation, hundreds, if not thousands of times. How do I, as a technically driven person or operationally focused person, how to become more confident, how to become more persuasive? And the secret is effective structure and process, as well as questioning in the sales element.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned that, the e-commerce comes along and basically, it's almost like a contest of who can sell this product for the cheapest, right? And get the biggest market share. How does a salesperson in that environment kind of overcome this discount mentality, right? That I have to give a discount in order to compete with the internet.
So I think there's a couple of things, because this has been a battle for salespeople forever, 50 years, 100 years, so, and it's a common battle I get with small to medium business owners we coach and train online worldwide. The first comment is to remember that the race to the bottom, if you're a small to medium business, unless you're buying bigger than everybody else, it's not a race you're going to win. Eventually you're going to lose. You're going to, allegedly Amazon spent $500 million or burnt through $500 million over a 5-year period before they turned $1 of pure profit. That's a long time to wait. Most small businesses don't have a bank of 500 million. So firstly, know what you can win and know what you can't win. You can't win economies of scale by buying better. So it's a game you can't win. So therefore value adding has to be your strategy. The second thing is Amazon and Walmart aside, and I appreciate in North America, they're big players. If you look at the fastest selling brands, if you look at the highest selling by unit, think about the world of shampoos. If it's anti-dandruff, I suspect it's Head and Shoulders in most countries in the world. In the case of, floor cleaners, or let's say washing powders, it'll be someone like a Tide, which again, happens to be a Procter & Gamble product where I worked. But globally, it's Ariel in the UK, and there'll be Persil in Australasia, which is Unilever. But if you look at the best-selling brands in the world, cars being Toyota, hamburgers being McDonald's, pretty much none of them are the cheapest. And that's an important lesson to get through to you, because as a business owner, what we've got to understand is the best-selling brands by unit, best number of cars, the most number of hamburgers, most number of cola drinks is Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola are very rarely the cheapest. There's always a home brand cola or budget cola that's always cheaper. Being the cheapest does not always give you the highest volume. And we need to have a mental shift to accept that. The moment we do, we'll start trying to sell on value and adding value to relationships.
I think that's a great lesson, great example.
Thank you.
I myself, I very seldom buy the cheapest one. I almost purposely, I'll find the cheapest one and I'll go like, that's not the one I want. I just know intrinsically.
Or I deserve better, or you ask yourself the question of the purchasing scenario. And you talked about pandemic. One change in the pandemic that we saw in the global financial crisis was obviously trust was damaged. People started doubting business leaders, in this pandemic, doubting and questioning medical leaders and questioning government leaders and state leaders and governors and everything else. It caused everyone to question. Well, that hasn't changed. The GFC caused everyone to question. So we're needing trust. And when we look at a product that's cheap, the first thing we look at is what was taken out of it to make it so cheap. There's an economic theory called the Giffen good, which talks about the fact that there's a price point at which all goods are not trusted. For some reason, when I was studying at a high school and university on that, they use potatoes as an example. If potatoes are $5 a kilo, we probably don't buy them because rice is a different starchy product that we could buy instead. $2 a kilo, sorry, you guys are in pounds, £2 for a pound. At $2 for a pound, you might go, yeah, absolutely, I'll go for it. 50 cents a pound, you go, yeah, I'll buy more potatoes. But if you walked into a grocery store and it's 1 cent a pound, you probably won't buy potatoes because you want to know what's wrong with the potatoes.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not a race a small to medium business is going to win, so don't bother. It's not a race that's ever been won globally. You literally pick anything: glasses, watches, clothing, sports shoes, sport attire, airlines. Now, Southwest Airlines in America is an interesting anomaly for the airline industry because they are a budget airline, claim to be a budget airline, which they are. But they're selling on the basis of the amazing service. That's why they do such a good thing. Their brand is about service. They happen to be cheap. But on best-selling airlines in the world, the budget airlines are not the best-selling airlines in the world.
No, they're not.
No one is the cheapest and the best seller.
Well, these days, Southwest is the airlines that seems to have the most customer fights and fisticuff occurrences. So maybe,
although I've seen a few YouTube channels on I think it was American and also United breaking someone's guitar once.
Yeah. So I'm not sure that the budget flight is the way to go anymore. So this is a long debate. It's been around forever. What's more important, a salesperson's personality or the sales process they follow?
I remember you hinting that you may ask that question, and now I was thinking about it before. Without question, it's funny. I did debate the whole. I could argue it both ways.
Yep.
Actually, I can't. In thinking about it, I can't argue it both ways. It is the process. It is absolutely the process. Some of the best salespeople in the world that I've never met, and some of the best salespeople in the world that I have met, coached, and trained, are highly introverted, non-traditional salespeople, often quite technical. And the reason why they're good is they do shut up to sell. They lead the customer. They control the conversation with the customer by questioning and preparing the process without question. That said, different personalities will use the process differently. Those that are extroverted, whether they're the dominant personality type, the hard-nosed salesperson, or the warm, bubbly, they need process to just rein themselves in a bit, just to slow them down a bit.
Yep.
The introverted people crave a process because it gives them confidence and security through the conversation. So absolutely 100% the process. It's what my book, which will come out in a few months' time, will focus on. It's essentially, one of the main things we teach. We've written 300 courses over the years. It's my favorite area because you can pick up the introverts and you can slow down most of the extroverts.
You and I cast our votes in the same category there. I've always contended that you can take a person who's not extroverted and give them a really good process, and they can do a very, very good job in a sales role. They just have to use the process for confidence. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yep. And think about it as well. You touched on around, the e-commerce and therefore marketing. If you think about a brand, a brand is its reputation, someone, how they feel about someone, how they feel about a business after they've consumed the product or service. And one of the key things about strong brands is consistency. So if you've got a team of 1 or a team of 10 or a team of 110, they should be treated consistently. When I've traveled the world, the bit that shocks me is pretty much every food court in every airport in the world that I've traveled to, there's always a queue for McDonald's or Burger King longer than anyone else's. Why? It's really consistent. Their service is consistent. You know what you're going to get. You know what the packaging feels like. You know what the taste is going to look like. And obviously, they're not queuing for nutritional value because there's typically someone next door making salads or something in the hot wok that's typically more nutritious. But consistency is king.
Yep, absolutely. I would agree. So kind of my last question for today is a little bit of forecasting into the future. We live in a world where technology is changing. This past 18 months, we've seen the adoption of technology in ways beyond what we could have imagined. What is a sales career going to be like, right, over the next 5 to 10 years? And if you're a business owner and you're hiring salespeople, what do you look for now?
Whew, there's a couple of questions in there, Carl.
Yeah.
I may do it in reverse if I could. What does a business owner look for? Often when we're coaching sales managers, often the business owner of a small business is the sales manager. So I'll answer that question. You're looking for somebody, first and foremost, and this is non-negotiable, someone aligned to your core values and principles. Because ultimately, if they don't believe in the core values of your business or the culture of your business, they're never going to fit. No matter how high performing they are on day one, they will clash with you because you're going to make a decision. For us, giving is a core value in our business. We always, tithe a fair amount of our income up front. We give to lots of charity to support or mentor others. So we've had people work for us who aren't giving in nature. And at some point, they struggle with the fact that we're giving away our time and giving away our money. And they just don't get it. And we say to them, go help them for free. And they're like, I want to make commission off them. It's like, they haven't got any money. Just go help them because they need help. And we have the ability to help. So clash of culture, you've got to avoid. So that's non-negotiable. And to understand that, you've got to go deeper with your interview questions, and you need to do reference checking to find out who is the human. That's the first thing. Secondly, I remember Procter & Gamble, it's popular in the US, obviously, to recruit. In the UK, I was one of 15 that joined from 3,500 graduate applicants. So they spend a lot of time understanding our attitudes and our drive and our work ethic. That will always pay back longer in the long term, or better in the long term, than somebody who comes with a database or a little black book of contacts, because eventually they run out of the contacts. So you're looking for the work ethic and the attitude. Then I would say you're looking for somebody with the skills. So think about salespeople. They need to be good at problem solving, good at listening, good at asking questions. They ideally will be engaging naturally. They need to be in a service mindset. So you go through that. That's a skills side. And obviously there's hundreds of sales skills to develop. Then I would touch on industry and product knowledge and names. And that literally is the last step. The mistake I see small to medium business owners are, oh, I've hired this guy. He's been working in the industry for 20 years. He's got loads of contacts. They literally reverse it. They go, what can he bring me today? We didn't investigate who he was as a person. We didn't investigate the fact that he's lazy. We didn't investigate his core values. So to me, regardless of pandemic, regardless of technology, that's the order of preference for recruitment. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
And then your second question, which was your first question, is how is the sales role evolving with technology? Something we've been passionate about teaching by default because we understand sales and marketing as a couple. My wife, Jo, and I both run the Sales Mastery Company and the marketingcompany.com. You need salespeople to be more marketing aware. In the same way, you need marketers who are more sales aware, more relationship aware. So to me, we've always been teaching salespeople how to market. So a salesperson now, it is their responsibility to typically have a LinkedIn profile and for it to be up to date. It is their responsibility to do market research, something marketers used to do. It is their responsibility to think about the brand of the business and the product and the service and themselves. It is the responsibility of a salesperson to see if they can be more efficient at the time management level, where often we might have said, that's the IT person's job, or that's the operations manager's job to look at productivity. The tools are all here. You know, our daughter was privileged to be on a scholarship at Houston Ballet Academy before the COVID pandemic hit, and we brought her home to be safe with us in New Zealand because she was only 16 years old, and it was scary to think our borders would close and she'd be stuck in America without us. You know, right. But the technology in these devices is greater than the NASA station in Houston to put people on the moon in the 60s. And that was a pretty incredible feat. Salespeople have got it here. What I would say in that right now, we don't have excuses in sales now. You can't say the system's not good enough, the software's not good enough, it's too expensive, I can't access training. You can do it all here. So be proactive, have the right attitude, and work hard.
No, I think that's great. Yeah, I like your take on that, because the last thing I would ever want to hire is a salesperson that came to me with a list of the customers from the previous business. Right?
Where's the ethics? Where's the ethics in that?
It tells me that he's going to be with me 2 or 3 years and he's going to repeat the process, right? And so I don't want to give energy to that by any means.
I'm
Ambrose,
really good with you on that.
Yeah, this has been great, Ambrose. I appreciate your time and input, and some good stuff from your experience over the last 20 years. We appreciate that, and I'm sure some of our audience got some good pieces of advice over the last 30 minutes or so. We wish you luck there in New Zealand.
Thank you so much. And look, what I'll say, as I said, Carl, I'm happy to help anybody. So if someone reaches out to me on LinkedIn and asks a question, no matter where they are in the world, if they're positive people and they're trying to grow, I'm always happy to help. And on salesmasterycompany.com /podcast, we've always got a free sales tool to help people get up and running. So if that can help people and your listeners, go for it, and go spend the money, and maybe once in a while visit New Zealand when the borders are open, and then indirectly I'll get the money back.
It's definitely on my list, my friend. I will.
Awesome.
I'll let you know when I get there.
Yeah, you do, because we're only 20 minutes from the airport, and I barely use the airport anymore.
Yeah, I hear that. I'm only 14 minutes from my airport, so I know the feeling.
Good.
Yeah,
Good.
Exactly. I moved to this side of town to get closer, and then this happened, right?
I moved a 5-hour drive to get closer to the airport and give me 40 nights a year more with my wife and kids. And then the pandemic hit 3.5 years later. So who's to know? We've got to keep our sense of humor, my friend.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, take care. And to
Likewise.
Everyone in our audience today, stay connected until we hear from you again.